My grandpa left me a crumbling shack with 4 cracked walls and a leaky tin roof, while my sister inherited a 2-story mansion in the ritzy Buckhead neighborhood of Atlanta. When the lawyer read the will on that swelteringly unbearable March afternoon, I felt the ground give way beneath me. There I was, Marina, 28 years old, learning that a lifetime of care and devotion was worth less than the fake smiles and occasional visits from my sister Fiona. The lawyer's office reeked of mildew and old paper. The yellowed walls had damp stains that looked like tears running down them. I sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, sweating through the only decent blouse I owned, bought from a thrift store on Peachtree Street. Next to me, Fiona sat with her legs crossed elegantly, showing off designer shoes that cost more than 2 months of my salary as an administrative assistant. Her blonde hair was flawless, as always. She didn't even need to work. She'd married a wealthy businessman early on and had been living the high life ever since, a life I only glimpsed through her Instagram posts. Dr. Thompson, a heavy-set man with glasses slipping down his sweaty nose, cleared his throat before continuing. To my granddaughter Marina, I leave the property located in rural Dawsonville, where she always found shelter when she needed it. My heart raced. For a moment, I thought maybe Grandpa had left me something worthwhile too. After all, I was the one who spent weekends with him, brought his meds when he forgot, and listened to his endless stories about his youth in the Georgia countryside. To my granddaughter Fiona, I leave the primary residence in Buckhead, including all furnishings and the savings account at Wells Fargo. The silence that followed was deafening. Fiona let out a relieved sigh, as if she'd just learned she'd never have to worry about money again. I sat frozen, trying to process what I'd heard. The shack in Dawsonville. That tiny 2-room house where Grandpa stored the old carpentry tools he hadn't touched since arthritis took over his hands. A place that smelled of pine and had an outhouse in the backyard. Meanwhile, Fiona got the 3-bedroom mansion with a pool and a century-old oak tree in the yard where we used to play as kids. "Is there some mistake?" I asked, my voice thinner than usual. The lawyer shook his head, adjusting his glasses. "No, Ms. Marina. It's all according to Mr. Joseph Carter's wishes." Fiona shifted in her seat and for the first time looked directly at me. There was something in her eyes I couldn't read right then. Maybe pity, or maybe relief that she didn't have to share anything with me. I remember the last conversation I had with Grandpa like it was yesterday. He was in his rocking chair on the porch, sipping reheated coffee from a chipped mug. It was a Sunday, and I'd brought cornbread from the farmer's market for his lunch. "Marina, darlin', you're just like your grandma," he said, pulling me to sit beside him on a wooden stool. Big heart, but life ain't kind to folks with big hearts. At the time, I thought he was just waxing poetic, as he did when loneliness hit hard. Now I realized it might have been an apology in advance. I left the lawyer's office with shaky legs, clutching the inheritance papers like they were a death sentence. Fiona followed me out to the sidewalk, where the March sun beat down without mercy. "Mari, look, I know you must be upset," she started, but I cut her off with a raised hand. "Upset?" The word came out sharper than I meant. "Fiona, you visited Grandpa twice a year. For those visits, he'd spend a week sprucing up, buying fancy cookies, pretending he wasn't sick. And me? I was there every single weekend, listening to him complain about his back pain, taking him to the clinic, doing his grocery shopping." She looked down, fiddling with her expensive purse. "I know you took care of him more, but what, Fiona? He loved you more? Is that it?" People on the street started to stare. An older woman slowed down to eavesdrop. Fiona's face turned red. "It's not like that, Mari. You know it's not like that. Then explain it to me. Explain how a lifetime of devotion is worth a 2-room shack with no indoor plumbing, while you get a mansion for showing up at Christmas and his birthday." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Fiona took a deep breath and said the words that haunt me to this day. "Mari, maybe Grandpa thought you needed to learn to stand on your own. I've got a family, stability. You've always been stronger. Stronger. As if being strong meant I deserved less. As if my ability to endure pain justified piling on more." That night, I went to the Dawsonville property for the first time since Grandpa's funeral. The house was just as he'd left it. The rusted iron gate creaked when I opened it. The tiny yard was overgrown with weeds up to my knees. The walls were peeling, and a few shingles had blown off during the last storm season. I stepped inside slowly, like I was entering a graveyard. The smell of mildew and neglect hit me like a punch to the gut. The tiny living room held just a worm-eaten wooden table and 2 mismatched chairs. On the wall, a faded photo of me and Fiona as kids, yellowed by time. I was about 8, she was 10. We were hugging, smiling at the camera. I couldn't recall when the picture was taken, but I remembered the feeling of having a big sister to protect me. What irony. I took the photo down and flipped it over. In Grandpa's shaky handwriting, "My darling granddaughters, 1995. The bedroom was even smaller, a sagging single bed and a 3-door wardrobe that didn't close properly. I opened the drawers and found some of Grandpa's old clothes, a thin gold chain I recognized from old photos, and a shoebox tied with twine. Inside, dozens of handwritten letters in neat cursive. I picked one at random and read, "Dear Daddy, I hope you're doing okay. Things are tough here in Chicago, but Ryan got a better job. I'm sending $10 to help with your meds. Love, Fiona." I sat on the bed and kept reading. All the letters were from Fiona, sent from Chicago, where she lived before moving back to Atlanta. In each one, she sent money. $10 here, 20 there. Sometimes 50 when Grandpa needed pricier meds. I had no idea. All those years, I thought I was the only one helping him. I thought Fiona just swooped in for meals and left. I read letter after letter, discovering a sister I didn't know. A Fiona who cared, who sent money faithfully every month, who wrote about missing home, about wanting to be closer to family. "Daddy, is Marina doing okay? Does she still visit you? I feel better knowing she's there. She's always been more caring than me." My throat tightened. In another letter, "Daddy, when I move back to Atlanta, I want to make up for all this time apart. I want to take care of you like Marina always has." I closed the box and stood up, dizzy. I walked to the yard and sat on a tree stump Grandpa used as a stool. The breeze carried the familiar smell of pine and river water. In the distance, I could hear the soft rush of the Etowah River. I always loved that sound. It was comforting, like a constant hug from nature. I started to understand. Fiona had supported Grandpa financially for years, from afar. I'd been there emotionally, present in person. But for an 82-year-old man from a generation where money meant security, maybe her financial help carried more weight. Maybe he thought I, who'd always made do with little, could turn that shack into something better, while Fiona, used to comfort, needed the ready-made structure. Or maybe I was just trying to find logic where there was none. Maybe Grandpa simply loved Fiona more, and that was that. That possibility hurt more than any explanation. When I got home that night, my mom was waiting in the living room. We shared a small apartment in Decatur, splitting rent and bills. When I told her about the inheritance, she stayed quiet for a long time, fidgeting with her fingers like she did when nervous. "Marina, your grandpa was a good man, but he had his quirks," she said finally. "He always thought you were too strong for your own good, said you needed hardship to grow. And Fiona didn't? Fiona was always more fragile, at least in his mind. More fragile." That word echoed in my head for days. Fiona, who'd built a stable life, married well, sent money to Grandpa every month, was seen as more fragile. While I, scraping by on a tight salary, never holding down a serious relationship, living with my mom at 28, was the strong one. For the next few weeks, I tried to focus on work, but it was impossible. I worked at a small accounting firm in downtown Atlanta, a cramped office on the 10th floor of an old building. I spent my days typing data and checking spreadsheets, earning a paycheck that barely covered my basics. Every day, on the crowded MARTA ride home, I thought about the Dawsonville shack, the possibilities, the impossibilities. One afternoon, Fiona called. "Mari, we need to talk. Want to come over?" I hesitated. We hadn't spoken since the will reading. "I'll come," I said, more out of curiosity than desire. Fiona's house was on a tree-lined street in Buckhead. Automatic gate, manicured lawn, 2-car garage. When I rang the bell, she answered herself, wearing casual clothes that still cost more than my entire wardrobe. "Come in, Mari." I made coffee. The living room was spacious, air-conditioned, with custom furniture. On the walls, photos of the perfect family. Her husband Ryan, and their 2 young kids. We sat on a leather sofa, and she poured coffee into porcelain cups. "Mari, I've been thinking a lot about what happened." I sipped the coffee, which was delicious, way better than the instant stuff I drank at home. "And what did you come up with?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "That Grandpa wasn't fair to you." Her honesty caught me off guard. I'd expected anything but that. "Marina, I know you took care of him way more than I did. You dealt with his quirks, his complaints, his stubborn old man ways, and it's not fair that you got next to nothing." I set the cup down, unsure how to respond. "So why didn't you refuse the inheritance?" "Because I need it, Mari. Ryan lost his job last month. His company went under. We're living off savings, but it won't last long." Fiona looked down, picking at her perfect manicure. "Marina, I never told you, but I sent Grandpa money for years, every month without fail. It wasn't much, but it helped with his meds, groceries, bills." "I know," I said. "I found the letters." Her eyes widened. "You read them?" "Every single one." The silence stretched again. Fiona sighed deeply. "So you know I cared about him, even from afar. You know I wanted to come back, but Chicago was our only option then. Ryan had work, the kids were in school." "I know all that, Fiona. But I still don't get why Grandpa split things this way." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the kids playing in the pool. "Mari, Grandpa came here 2 weeks before he died. Said he wanted to talk about the will." My heart sped up. "Did he explain his decision?" "He did. Said you were always the granddaughter who didn't need much to be happy. That you found joy in simple things. That you had the strength to overcome anything. He said I was more dependent, more fragile, more in need of structure." I stood, anger rising in my chest. "So he punished me for being strong, punished me for not complaining, for always being there." "It wasn't punishment, Mari, at least not in his mind. He said he knew you'd turn that shack into something special. Said you had a gift for making miracles out of nothing." "And you believed that?" "I tried to talk him out of it, I swear. Said it wasn't fair, that you deserved more. But he was set on it, said it was for the best." I paced the room, trying to process it all. "You know what hurts most, Fiona? It's not even the house itself. It's finding out that a lifetime of devotion was seen as my duty. Like I was born to care for others and not be cared for in return." "You're right to be angry." "Damn right I am. And you know why I'm even angrier? Because everyone accepts this as normal. Grandpa, you, Mom, everyone thinks it's fine for me to always be the one sacrificing, getting less, settling for scraps." Fiona turned from the window, her eyes red. "Mari, I want to make a proposal." I stopped pacing and eyed her suspiciously. "What kind of proposal?" "Let's sell both properties and split the money 50-50. The suggestion left me speechless. "What?" "We sell the mansion and the shack. With the money, you buy a decent apartment, I buy another. We split it evenly, like it should have been from the start." For a moment, I felt a surge of hope. Finally, justice. Someone recognizing I deserved more. But then I remembered the letters, Fiona's years of financial support, the complexity of it all. "And if I don't want to sell?" I asked, more to test her than out of conviction. "Then you keep your inheritance, and I keep mine." "But Mari, think about it. That shack will cost a fortune to fix up. Even renovated, it'll never be worth much. Here in Buckhead, with this ready-made setup, the values way higher." She was right, of course. Financially, it made sense. But something in me resisted the idea of just accepting her offer and moving on. Maybe pride, maybe stubbornness, or maybe the need to prove I could turn that shack into something special like Grandpa believed I could. "I need to think about it," I said. Fiona nodded. "Of course, take your time." No rush. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. "Mari," she called as I was leaving. "Whatever you decide, I want you to know I see everything you did for Grandpa. And I know he loved you deeply, even if he made an unfair choice. If he loved me so much, why did he do this to me?" The question came out more vulnerable than I intended. Because sometimes we hurt the ones we love, thinking we're doing what's best. Sometimes we mess up big, even with good intentions. I left Fiona's house with my head spinning. Her offer was generous, fair, rational. Any sensible person would have taken it on the spot, but I couldn't decide. Something about it gnawed at me, beyond money or fairness. It was like accepting her offer would mean admitting defeat, admitting I needed saving, that I couldn't make it on my own. On the hot, crowded MARTA ride home, I stared out the window at Atlanta's familiar streets passing slowly. The modest houses, the corner stores, the sweaty folks waiting at bus stops. This was my world. The world where I grew up, learned to scrape by, built my identity. Was I ready to give that up for a more comfortable life? Was that what I really wanted? When I got home, Mom was watching her soap opera in the living room as usual. I told her about Fiona's offer. She turned off the TV and gave me her full attention, which was rare. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know, Mom. I really don't." She stayed quiet for a while, gathering her thoughts. "Marina, can I give you some advice?" "Sure." "Don't make this decision out of anger. Anger's a terrible guide." She was right, I knew. I was consumed by resentment, the sense of injustice, the need to prove something to everyone. Those weren't the best feelings to base a big decision on. "But Mom, how do I not be angry? How do I accept this unfairness?" "It's not about accepting, honey. It's about not letting the unfairness control you." That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of my tiny bedroom, thinking through every possibility, every scenario. If I took Fiona's offer, I'd have enough to buy a decent apartment, maybe even go to college, build a more stable life. If I kept the shack, I'd be taking on a massive challenge with little money and a lot of uncertainty. But there was something deeper at play, something about who I was and who I wanted to be. My whole life, I'd been the one who adapted, who accepted less, who didn't complain. The strong one, as everyone liked to say. But did being strong mean always taking what was offered? Or did it mean, this time, fighting for what I believed I deserved? In the early hours, I finally drifted off, but my dreams were strange. I saw Grandpa, young and strong, building a house with his own hands. In the dream, he looked at me and said, "Marina, darling, the house doesn't matter. What matters is what you make of it." I woke up with those words echoing in my head, unsure if it was really a dream or my mind conjuring comforting messages. Over the next few days, I visited the shack a few more times. Each visit revealed new problems: leaks, faulty wiring, old plumbing. But it also showed possibilities. The small yard got sun all day. The location, though modest, was just steps from the river. The structure, though needing repairs, was solid. One afternoon, I walked the neighborhood and talked to longtime residents, folks who'd known Grandpa for decades. Ms. Annette, an elderly woman with white hair living next door, shared stories I'd never heard. "Your grandpa always talked about you, honey. Said you had a heart like your grandma's. God rest her soul." "Did he talk about Fiona too?" I asked. "Sure did, but it was different. He worried about Fiona, said she needed looking after. You, he talked about with pride." Pride. That word stuck with me. Maybe Grandpa really was proud of me. Maybe the uneven inheritance wasn't neglect, but a strange way of showing trust. Trust that I could do something extraordinary with little. Trust that I didn't need a ready-made life to build my own. But if that was true, why hadn't he explained it? Why hadn't he talked to me before he died, like he did with Fiona? Why let me find out in such a painful way? Those questions had no answers, and maybe they never would. Grandpa took his reasons to the grave, leaving us to deal with the consequences. I arranged to meet Fiona to give her my final answer. We met at a coffee shop in Midtown, neutral ground where we could talk calmly. She arrived on time, as always, looking elegant even in casual clothes. We ordered coffee and sat in silence for a moment, both knowing this conversation would shape our relationship's future. "I've made my decision," I said finally. Fiona leaned forward, eyes full of anticipation. "And what is it?" "I'm keeping the shack." She blinked, confused. "What do you mean, Mari?" "I'm keeping my inheritance. I'm not selling." "But Mari, think about it. You'll spend a fortune fixing that place, and even then, it'll still be a shack, right? Is that what you were going to say? Fiona flushed. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is, Fiona. And you're right. It'll always be a shack, but it'll be my shack. I sipped my coffee, trying to keep my voice steady. My whole life, I've accepted less. Low pay, lousy relationships, people treating me like I don't deserve better. But you know what? I'm done. Fiona's eyes filled with tears. Mari, you're making a mistake. Maybe, but at least it'll be my mistake, on my terms. I stood and grabbed my purse. Fiona, thanks for the offer. It was generous, truly, but I need to do this my way. And if it goes wrong, then I'll have learned something by trying. 3 months after turning down Fiona's offer, I was on my knees in the shack, prying up rotten floorboards with a borrowed crowbar. My hands were calloused and splintered, my nails broken and caked with peeling paint. Sweat dripped down my face as I battled each piece of flooring that seemed glued down with eternal cement. It was Saturday morning, and I'd woken at 5 a.m. to beat the Georgia heat. The decision to renovate alone came from necessity, not heroism. I couldn't afford contractors, electricians, or painters. My salary barely covered basics, and what little I saved went straight to building supplies. I learned everything from YouTube and the old-timers in the neighborhood, who looked at me with a mix of admiration and pity. That girl's gonna work herself to death, I heard Ms. Annette whisper whenever she saw me hauling bags of cement alone. But there was something freeing in the manual labor. Every wall I tore down, every wire I replaced, every square foot of new flooring I laid gave me a sense of accomplishment I'd never felt at the office. It was like I was building not just a house, but a new version of myself. One that didn't settle for less, wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty, and didn't need anyone's approval to make big decisions. Fiona called now and then, always with that maternal concern that grated on my nerves. Mari, are you sure about this? There's still time to change your mind. In her last call 2 weeks ago, she'd been blunt. Marina, you're killing yourself for nothing. That house will never be worth the effort you're putting in. I hung up without answering. There was nothing left to discuss. What Fiona didn't know was that I was uncovering things about Grandpa that changed everything about the inheritance. While tearing down the bedroom, I found a hidden compartment behind the wardrobe. Nothing fancy, just a hole in the wall covered by a loose board. Inside, wrapped in plastic, were old documents, photos, and a savings account booklet from Bank of America. The photos showed the house in different eras. In the oldest ones, from the 1960s, it was a simple but well-kept home with a blooming garden and fresh paint. There were pictures of Grandpa, young, with a beautiful woman I recognized as Grandma Clara, who died when I was 5. They stood smiling on the porch that was now collapsing, holding a toddler who must have been my dad. But the savings booklet stopped me cold. I opened it with trembling hands and saw regular deposits over 15 years. Small amounts, but consistent. $10 here, $20 there. The last deposit was made 2 weeks before Grandpa died. In total, there was over $4,600 in the account. Money I didn't know existed. I rushed to the bank that Monday, documents in hand, heart pounding. The teller, a bored young woman, confirmed the account was in my name since the last deposit. Your grandfather transferred ownership weeks before he passed, she said, typing away. He left instructions that you could only access it after presenting the estate settlement papers. I left the bank dazed. Grandpa had left me money after all. Not a fortune, but enough to finish the renovation with some dignity, without breaking my back hauling heavy materials or learning electrical work from phone videos. But why hadn't he mentioned it in the will? Why another surprise for me to uncover alone? That night, I called Mom and told her about the discovery. She was quiet for a long time before letting out a deep sigh. Marina, your grandpa was a complicated man. Always was. Mom, did you know about this account? I suspected. He was always squirreling away money, even when he was young. Your grandma used to fuss about it. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wasn't sure. And I figured you were already hurting enough over the inheritance. Another person shielding me from hard truths. Another person deciding what I should or shouldn't know. But this time, oddly, I didn't feel angry. I felt relief. I finally had the means to turn that shack into something special, like Grandpa believed I could. With the savings, I hired Mr. Raymond, a retired mason who lived 3 blocks away, and offered to help for a fair price. He was a short man with a gray mustache and huge calloused hands from decades of work. He'd known Grandpa since they were young and shared stories while we worked together. "Your grandpa was stubborn as a mule," he said one hot afternoon while we tiled the new indoor bathroom we'd built. "But he was an honest man. When he made a promise, he kept it. Do you know why he left the Buckhead house to Fiona?" Mr. Raymond stopped tiling and gave me a serious look. "Girl, can you keep a secret if I tell you something?" I promised, and he went on. "Your sister ain't your dad's full sister." The words hit like lightning. "What do you mean?" "Your grandma Clara had Fiona before she married your grandpa. Fiona's real dad was a rich man from Buckhead, married, who never claimed her. Your grandpa raised her as his own, but he always knew she wasn't his blood." I sat on the floor, trying to wrap my head around it. Did my dad know? Everybody knew, girl. It was an open secret. Fiona never knew, but your whole family did. So Grandpa left her the Buckhead house because he thought he was giving her what was rightfully hers. That house belonged to her real dad's family. Your grandpa bought it from one of their aunts who was broke years back. The revelation left me dizzy. Fiona wasn't my full sister. She was my half-sister. And the mansion she inherited was tied to her biological father's family, a family that never acknowledged her. Grandpa, by leaving her that house, was trying to right a wrong, giving her something that could have been hers from birth. "Why didn't anyone ever tell me?" I asked. Mr. Raymond shrugged. "Wasn't your business, girl. It was Fiona's, and your grandpa always figured she'd find out when she was ready. But she never did." "Nope. And it's going to be a hard truth to break, ain't it?" For the next few days, I was obsessed with this information. I looked at Fiona differently when I saw her in passing or on social media. Now that I knew, I noticed differences I'd never seen before. The shape of her face, the color of her eyes, even how she walked. How had I never noticed she didn't look like our dad? 3 weeks later, the renovation was nearly done. The 2-room shack had become a cozy home with light colors that caught the natural light, new floors that didn't creak, and working electrical and plumbing systems. The yard, once just weeds, now had a small but tidy garden with plants I'd bought cheaply at the farmer's market. I was finishing the exterior painting when I got an unexpected visitor. It was Thursday evening, and I was washing brushes in the backyard when I heard a knock at the gate. I opened it to find a man in a suit, sweating and clearly uncomfortable in the heat. "Are you Marina Carter?" he asked. "Yes. How can I help you?" "I'm Anthony Freeman, attorney. I'm here representing a client interested in buying your property." My first instinct was to laugh. After months of backbreaking work, calloused hands, and sleepless nights planning every detail, someone wanted to buy my house. "It's not for sale," I said flatly. "You haven't even heard the offer." "Don't need to. It's not for sale." He pressed. "My client is prepared to pay $25,000 cash." The amount made me stammer. $25,000 was way more than I thought the house could be worth, even renovated. It was enough to buy a decent condo in another area, maybe even start college. "Who's your client?" I asked, suspicious. "I can't disclose that, unfortunately. But I assure you, they're serious and have the funds." I asked him to wait and close the gate. My mind was racing. Why would someone pay so much for a house in rural Dawsonville? Why now, when I was almost done renovating? Something felt off. "I need to think about it," I said when I returned. The lawyer handed me his card. "Here's my number. Don't take too long. My client's impatient." That night, I couldn't sleep. $25,000 would change my life. But the lawyer's urgency, the secrecy about the buyer, the above-market offer, it all felt wrong. Like someone was desperate to get this house. The next day, I decided to dig deeper. I went to the county records office and asked to see the property's full history. After some searching through dusty files, the clerk showed me documents dating back to the 1950s. The house originally belonged to the Freeman family, one of Atlanta's oldest and wealthiest. In 1962, it was sold to Grandpa for a pittance, apparently during a financial emergency. The name Freeman rang a bell. Where had I heard it? Then it hit me over dinner. Freeman, the same last name as the lawyer, Anthony Freeman. Coincidence? I Googled and found that the Freeman family was still a big deal in Atlanta. They owned several businesses, including a major real estate development firm. And there was a controversial project in the news, a luxury resort planned for Dawsonville, right in the area where my house stood. The project had been stalled for years over environmental concerns and local pushback. It all clicked. My house was in a key spot for the resort. Without it, the project couldn't move forward. The Freemans, who'd lost the property decades ago, now wanted it back to make their multi-million-dollar deal happen. The following Monday, the lawyer returned, this time with an older man with gray hair and expensive clothes. "Ms. Marina, this is Charles Freeman, my client." The man extended his hand with a forced smile. "Pleasure to meet you. I hear you've done an incredible job fixing up this house." Charles Freeman looked around with a nostalgic glint. "You know, I was born here, in this house. It's where I spent my childhood before my family moved to Buckhead." "And now you want to buy it back?" I asked, arms crossed. "Exactly. For sentimental reasons, of course." "Of course," I said, dripping with sarcasm. "And it has nothing to do with the resort you're trying to build in this area." His smile faltered. "I see you're well informed." "I am. And I know without this house, your project's dead in the water." Charles sighed, dropping the act. "Look, Marina, I'll be straight with you. Yes, we need your property to make this development happen, and we're willing to pay well for it, way more than it's worth. And if I don't want to sell, why wouldn't you? It's a once-in-a-lifetime chance to change your life. Because this is my house. Because I've spent months turning it into what it is today. Because I'm not interested in helping a project that'll destroy the character of this community." Charles shook his head, impatient. "Ms. Marina, you're being too romantic. Development is progress. It'll bring jobs, tourism, and boost the whole area. And displace families who've lived here for generations. Those families can sell their homes for far above market value and buy better ones elsewhere. And if they don't want to leave, everyone has a price, Marina. Everyone." The words infuriated me. "I don't." "Are you sure? I can go up to $30,000. The offer jumped by $5,000 in one conversation, a sign they were desperate. "No." Charles's patience frayed. "Ms. Marina, you don't understand. This project will happen, with or without your house. It'd be better for everyone if you cooperated." "Is that a threat?" "It's friendly advice." I slammed the door in their faces and leaned against it, heart racing. That was definitely a threat. And now I understood why Grandpa left this house to me. He knew the Freemans would come for it. He knew I'd be the only one stubborn enough to stand up to them and protect our family's legacy. That night, I called Fiona and told her everything. The buyout offer, the discovery about her paternity, the resort project, the veiled threats. She was quiet for a long time. "Mari, are you sure about all this?" "I have the documents, Fiona. I can show you." "And about my paternity?" Her voice cracked. "Is that really true?" "It's what Mr. Raymond told me, and it would explain a lot about Grandpa's choices." Fiona started crying on the other end. "Marina, I don't know what to say. My whole life's been a lie." "It wasn't a lie, Fiona. Grandpa loved you like his own daughter. The biology never mattered to him. But it matters to me," she said through sobs. "It explains why I never felt fully part of the family. Why I always felt different. Fiona, you're my sister, no matter what a DNA test says. We grew up together, share the same childhood memories, the same family. But I got a house tied to my biological family, a family that rejected me before I was even born. And Grandpa was trying to fix that injustice. He was giving you what should have been yours from the start, and left you with the burden of protecting the family property. He knew the Freemans would come for it. Looks that way. Marina, you can't face these people alone. They've got too much power, too much money. So what do you suggest? Sell the house, take the money, and we'll buy a condo together, like I offered before. Fiona, If I sell now, I'd be betraying the trust Grandpa put in me. And if you don't, you could get into serious trouble. I hung up more confused than ever. Fiona was right about the risks of taking on a powerful family. But I felt like I was in the middle of something bigger than a simple inheritance. It was about principles, preserving the community's history, standing up to the greed that was making Atlanta more unequal every day. The pressure ramped up over the next few days. Cars with tinted windows started parking on the street, men in suits watching my house. I got anonymous calls in the middle of the night. Someone spray-painted, "Sell now," on my front fence. Ms. Annette warned me that men were asking about me in the neighborhood, wanting to know my routine, my work hours. At the office, my boss, Ms. Susan, called me for a private talk. "Marina, I got a weird call today. Some guy asking about your work habits, your punctuality, if you had financial problems." "What did you tell them?" "That you're an exemplary employee and your personal life's none of their business." "But Marina, are you in some kind of trouble?" I gave her a brief rundown. Ms. Susan, a 50-year-old woman who'd built her accounting firm from the ground up, was outraged. "That's harassment, Marina. You need to file a police report." "You think it'll help? At least it'll be on record. And if things escalate, you'll have a paper trail." I went to the police station that afternoon. The officer, a tired man who'd seen it all, listened carefully. "Ms. Marina, technically, no crime's been committed yet. I can't arrest anyone for making buyout offers or parking on the street." "What about the anonymous calls?" "Hard to prove, but I'll file your complaint. If things get worse, come back right away." I left the station feeling alone in this fight. The police couldn't do anything proactive. Fiona was urging me to give up. Mom was too worried to offer useful advice. It was me against a family with decades of influence in Atlanta. But they didn't know one thing about me. I was as stubborn as Grandpa. And the more they pushed, the more determined I got to resist. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about not letting powerful people trample those who couldn't fight back. It was about honoring Grandpa's memory and proving he'd chosen the right person to protect his legacy. On Friday, something changed everything. I was leaving work when I saw Fiona waiting outside the building, leaning against her car with a serious look I hadn't seen in years. "Mari, we need to talk. It's urgent." "What happened?" "I found out who the Freemans are and why they want that house so badly." We went to a nearby cafe, and she told me what she'd uncovered. "Marina, I hired a private investigator. I wanted to understand more about my biological paternity." "And what did he find?" "My real dad wasn't just any Freeman. It was Charles Freeman, the same guy trying to buy your house." The revelation left me speechless. "What?" "He's my father, Marina. The man pressuring you to sell is my biological father." The irony was staggering. Charles Freeman was trying to buy back not just the house he was born in, but also strong-arming the daughter he never acknowledged, unaware of who she was. "Fiona, does he know who you are?" "No, and I'm not planning to tell him. Not yet." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to help you fight him. It's the right thing to do." For the first time in months, I felt I wasn't alone in this battle. Fiona, always the protected sister, was ready to take on her own biological father to stand by me. "Fiona, this could be dangerous for you too. Let it be. I'm tired of being the one who stays quiet and accepts everything. I learned that from you." That night, we planned our strategy. Fiona would use her social connections to dig up more on the resort project. I'd keep documenting every attempt at intimidation. Together, we'd find allies in the community and the press to shine a light on the situation. But neither of us expected Charles Freeman to have one final move that would test our limits and uncover secrets that would change our lives forever. Charles Freeman's final blow came on a chilly August Monday. I was at work when Ms. Susan called me, her face pale, holding a notice. "Marina, this came for you. It's from the courthouse." I opened the envelope with trembling hands and read the official document, a lawsuit for repossession. The Freemans were claiming the 1962 sale to Grandpa was fraudulent, and the property should revert to their family. My world collapsed. 63 years later, they were challenging a transaction that was legally recorded, paid for, and never disputed. But I knew with enough money and slick lawyers, anything could be contested in court, especially when the other side was a regular person with no resources for a proper defense. I called Fiona right away. "They've filed a lawsuit, Fiona. They want to take the house in court. Stay calm, Mari. I'm coming over." She arrived at the office in 20 minutes, still in a bathrobe, hair wet, eyes red from lack of sleep. "Marina, I didn't sleep thinking about this, and I've made a decision." "What decision?" "I'm going to confront Charles Freeman. I'm going to tell him who I am." "Fiona, are you sure?" "It's the only card we have left to play." She showed me a folder full of documents. "I hired a lawyer yesterday, Mr. Richard, a family law specialist. He says if I can prove paternity, I can claim inheritance rights over the Freeman estate, including the house they're trying to take from you." The irony was perfect. The daughter he never acknowledged was about to use her biological status to protect her sister's home. "But Fiona, do you have proof of paternity?" "I have Mom's birth certificate, listing father unknown. I have witnesses from back then who can confirm her relationship with Charles. And if needed, I can request a DNA test." That afternoon, we went to Charles Freeman's office, a sleek glass building in downtown Atlanta. The receptionist, a blonde with long nails, looked at us with disdain when we said we wanted to see Mr. Freeman. "He doesn't take walk-ins." "Tell him Marina Carter's here," Fiona said with authority, "and that I have information about the Dawsonville lawsuit." Charles saw us in 5 minutes. His office was intimidating. Mahogany desk, shelves of legal books, framed degrees covering a wall. He greeted us with his usual fake smile, but his eyes held tension. "What a surprise to see you ladies. I assume you're here to discuss a settlement." "I'm here to discuss more than that," Fiona said, opening her folder. "I'm here to discuss family." Charles frowned. "What do you mean?" "My name is Fiona Carter Sanders. I'm the daughter of Clara Sanders, who worked in your household in 1964. Charles's face changed completely. The color drained, his eyes widened, his hands trembled slightly. "Clara Sanders," he repeated, as if tasting the name. "I don't recall any Clara." "Sure you do," Fiona said, placing an old photo on the desk. "This is my mother at 16. Recognize her?" It was a picture I'd never seen, of Grandma Clara as a teenager, stunning like a movie star, smiling shyly at the camera. Charles picked up the photo with shaking hands. He stared at it for what felt like forever, and when he looked up, his eyes were wet. "My God," he whispered. "Clara, my little Clara." "Not little, Charles. She was 16 when you, a married 30-year-old, got her pregnant and then vanished from her life." The silence in the office was deafening. Charles was in shock, processing that the daughter he never knew was standing before him after nearly 60 years. "Fiona," he said finally, You're my daughter. Biologically, yes. But my dad was Joseph Carter, the man who raised me with love and care while you went on with your life like nothing happened. Clara never told me she was pregnant. That's a lie. She tried to tell you multiple times. Your wife found out and threatened her. Said if she didn't disappear, she'd ruin her life and her family's." Charles bowed his head, defeated. "My ex-wife was difficult, jealous to a fault, capable of anything to protect our marriage and social standing. And you let her. You abandoned a pregnant teenager to keep your reputation intact. I was young, Fiona, scared, with responsibilities, with privileges you didn't want to lose," she corrected. "And now you have a daughter you never knew, trying to defend the house where you grew up from your family's greed." Charles stood and walked to the window, staring at the city below. "What do you want from me?" "We want you to drop the lawsuit against Marina," Fiona said. "And we want official recognition of my paternity." "Recognition? After all these years? It's never too late to do the right thing. And if I refuse, then we go to the press. Imagine the headline: Wealthy developer sues humble family, discovers he's suing his own daughter. Imagine the damage to your reputation and business." Charles turned, looking cornered. "That's blackmail." "That's justice," Fiona shot back. He slumped back into his chair. "I need time to think." "You have until Thursday," Fiona said, standing. "If we don't hear from you by then, we'll find other ways to handle this." We left the office feeling victorious. Fiona was transformed, as if she'd tapped into a strength she didn't know she had. In the car, she broke down crying. "Mari, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. You were incredible, Fiona. Brave, steady, dignified. You know what hurts most? Looking at him, I saw parts of myself. The shape of my nose, the color of my eyes. We look alike. And that bothers you?" "It bothers me because my whole life I felt out of place in the family, and now I know why. But it also makes me angry, because I could have had a father, and instead, I had a ghost." Thursday came with no word from Charles. On Friday, Fiona followed through on her threat. She contacted Jessica Reed, an investigative reporter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, known for exposing corruption and abuse of power. Jessica jumped on the story and scheduled an interview for the following Monday. But on Sunday, something unexpected happened. Charles showed up at my house alone, no lawyers or security. He looked worn out, with dark circles and wrinkled clothes. "Marina, can we talk?" "Fiona's not here." "I didn't come to see her. I came to see you." I opened the gate and invited him in. He looked around the renovated house with genuine admiration. "You've done an incredible job here, really transformed this place." "Thanks." "Marina, I want to apologize for the pressure, the threats, the lawsuit. It wasn't right. Are you dropping the case?" "Yes, but I want to ask for something in return." I eyed him warily. "What kind of something?" "I want you to help me get to know Fiona. I know I lost the right to be her father long ago, but I'd like a chance to be at least a friend, someone in her life. That's not up to me, Charles. That's up to her." "I know, but maybe you could put in a good word for me." We sat in silence for a moment. Then he continued, "Marina, can I tell you why I wanted this house so badly?" "Go ahead." "It's not just the resort. It's because I was born here, grew up here, had my only truly happy moments here. After my family lost this house, everything changed. My dad turned bitter, my mom depressed. We went from a close family to strangers under one roof. And you thought buying it back would bring that happiness back?" "Exactly. Naive, right?" He gave a bitter laugh. "I thought I could turn back time, fix the mistakes, reclaim something lost forever. Happiness isn't in the walls, Charles. It's in the people. And you had an incredible daughter who could have made you happy if you'd given her a chance." Tears rolled down his face. "I know that now. When I look at Fiona, I see everything I missed. I see the strong, determined woman she became, despite me abandoning her. I see the kindness in her eyes, which she must have gotten from her mother. And I see she grew up better without me than she would have with me. Maybe. But it's never too late to try building something new. Do you think she'd give me a chance?" "I don't know, Charles. Fiona's hurt, confused, dealing with revelations that flipped her whole sense of self. But I know my sister, and she's got a big heart. If you're honest, if you're patient, you might build something with her." Charles nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Marina, I'm dropping the lawsuit Monday morning, and I'll recognize Fiona's paternity officially, if she wants it. And the resort project? It'll go forward, but without your property. We'll redesign it to work around your house. And the other families in the area? We'll make fair offers, no pressure, no threats. If they want to sell, they sell. If they want to stay, they stay." When Charles left, I called Fiona and told her about the conversation. She was quiet for a long time. "Mari, I don't know if I'm ready to have a dad in my life. You don't have to decide now. Take it slow, get to know him, see if there's a connection. What if I'm disappointed again? Then you stop trying. But Fiona, what if it works? What if you build something good?" Monday brought shocking news. Charles kept his word. He dropped the lawsuit, officially recognized Fiona's paternity, and gave an interview to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, owning up to his past mistakes and committing to repair the damage done to the Dawsonville community. The fallout was huge. Fiona's and my story made headlines not just in Atlanta, but across the Southeast. Millionaire developer sues family, learns he's suing his own daughter. The inheritance that uncovered family secrets. Sisters unite against real estate greed. Suddenly, we were famous. With fame came opportunities. A TV channel invited us to share our story on a Sunday talk show. A publisher wanted to turn our experience into a book. Influencers started talking about our case on social media. But the real impact was in the community. Other families facing pressure from greedy developers took inspiration from our stand and began organizing. We formed a neighborhood association to protect the area's traditional character. We got the city to designate it a historic preservation zone. 3 months later, Fiona and Charles had their first meeting as father and daughter. She asked me to come along, and we went to a cozy little diner in Savannah. It was tense at first, but they slowly opened up. Charles shared about his life, his regrets, how Fiona's absence left a hole he never filled. Fiona talked about her childhood, Grandpa Joseph, and feeling like she never quite fit in the family. "You know what impresses me most about you?" Charles said at the end of the meal. "Your loyalty to Marina. You could have kept the whole inheritance and been happy, but you chose to fight for her." "Because Marina's my real sister," Fiona replied. "You don't need blood to be family." 6 months later, my life was unrecognizable. The Dawsonville house had become a local attraction, with people coming from miles away to see the shack that stood up to the powerful. I opened it for weekend tours, sharing our story with anyone who'd listen. The tour money, plus royalties from the book we wrote, let me quit my accounting job and focus on the project full-time. Fiona and Charles were building a cautious but growing relationship. She didn't call him Dad yet, but there was real warmth between them. Charles became a sort of community protector, using his influence to block predatory projects and support local initiatives. The Buckhead mansion Fiona inherited became the headquarters for an NGO we started to defend traditional communities against real estate speculation. The irony was sweet. A house that once symbolized privilege now served to protect the vulnerable. One Saturday afternoon, I was watering the garden when Fiona showed up with a wild idea. "Mari, what if we took a trip?" "Where to?" "To meet Charles's family. He says he has relatives in rural Georgia, simple folks who never knew I existed." The idea thrilled me. "When?" "Next week." Charles offered to come with us, but only if we're okay with it. "And are you?" "I am. I feel like I need to know this part of myself that's always been a mystery." We set out the following Saturday in a rented car, heading down GA 400 toward Lumpkin County. Charles drove quietly, visibly nervous. Fiona sat in the front, staring out at the rolling hills and pine forests of rural Georgia. I was in the back, reflecting on how our lives had changed in less than a year. Charles's family lived in a modest house surrounded by pecan trees and wildflowers. When we arrived, a crowd of cousins, aunts, and uncles who hadn't seen Charles in years welcomed us. When he introduced Fiona as his daughter, the emotion was overwhelming. Ms. Ruth, Charles's older sister, a 70-year-old woman with white hair and work-worn hands, hugged Fiona with tears in her eyes. "Child, you've got our family's look. That smile, it's just like my brother's when he was a boy." "You're not upset I showed up out of nowhere?" Fiona asked. "Upset? Honey, you're a blessing. This family needed new blood, new joy." We spent the whole weekend there, hearing stories, learning traditions, understanding where Charles, and by extension Fiona, came from. They were simple, hard-working people, full of love and generosity. Nothing like the image I had of the Buckhead Freemans. On the drive back, Fiona was transformed. "Mari, I get so much about myself now. The stubbornness, the need for justice, the ease with people. It all comes from that family. How do you feel about it?" "Whole. For the first time, I feel whole." Charles was different too, lighter, more human. The reunion with his roots had done him good. "Marina," he said as we neared Atlanta, "thank you for helping me reconnect with my family. I didn't deserve it, after everything I did to you both. Everyone deserves a second chance, Charles, even those who mess up big." A year after the will reading that turned our lives upside down, Fiona and I sat on the porch of the Dawsonville house, sipping coffee and watching the river. The house was beautiful, with a blooming garden and walls painted a soft yellow that glowed in the sunset. Kids played in the street. Neighbors chatted at their gates. Life moved at its natural, welcoming pace. "Mari, do you regret anything?" Fiona asked. You mean turning down your offer to sell and split everything? Yeah, I thought about it for a moment. No, if I'd taken it, we'd never have uncovered the truth about our family. We'd never have faced our fears. We'd never have grown as people. And I'd never have found my biological dad. And I'd never have proved to myself I could turn a shack into a real home. You know what's most incredible about this? Fiona asked. What? Grandpa was right. He said you had a gift for making miracles out of nothing. And that's exactly what you did. I looked around the house I'd built with my own hands, thinking of everything we'd been through, all the discoveries, all the growth. It wasn't a miracle, Fiona. It was stubbornness to not settle for less than I deserved. And I learned that from you. I learned to not accept less than I deserve. That night, alone in the bedroom I'd renovated myself, I pulled out the faded photo I'd found that first day of me and Fiona as kids, hugging and smiling. On the back, Grandpa's shaky handwriting, "My darling granddaughters, 1995. I grabbed a pen and wrote beneath it, "My warrior granddaughters, 2025. Who learned that family isn't just blood, that home isn't just walls, and that sometimes what seems unfair is just the universe preparing us for something bigger. Thank you, Grandpa, for believing I could turn this shack into the most beautiful place in the world. You were right." I tucked the photo in a drawer and lay down, listening to the familiar sound of the river. Tomorrow was a new day, full of possibilities, in a house that was truly mine, in a life I'd built with courage and determination, and beside a sister who learned that being strong doesn't mean settling for less, but fighting for what you believe you deserve. That was the greatest inheritance Grandpa left me, not the house itself, but the chance to discover what I was capable of when I refused to accept crumbs. And in the end, that was worth more than any Buckhead mansion.